Welcome to Go Solo Live.
Don't you mean go solo live? Have you ever been asked, why on earth would you travel alone? Go Solo Live not only answers that question, but celebrates life as a midlife solo traveler. This is a safe place for women to come together to reminisce about their travels, encourage others to travel, and to dig into the real lessons learned from these journeys. Now join Jennifer Buchholz with Transform Via Travel as she and her guests share stories of the solo travelers of midlife women.
Before we get started, today I have two announcements about exciting things going on with Transform Via Travel. The first is the launch of our first group trip. I've partnered up with Kelly McDermott from A Path Less Taken, and we're planning an amazing trip to New Zealand in January 2019. For more information, go to bit.ly, bit.ly link, /WENZ 2019. It's all lowercase letters, WENZ 2019. And follow us on Facebook at Transform Via Travel for more information about an upcoming question and answer webinar. Also, I've just launched an online program called Get Ready, Get Set, Go Solo, designed to help the first-time solo traveler get unburied from all the research and actually start traveling. For more information about the online program, go to bit.ly/readyset-solo. That's bit.ly/readyset-solo. And that information will also be included in our show notes. Now, back to our regularly scheduled programming. Hello, sisters, and welcome to Go Solo Live. This is Jennifer Buchholz with Transform Via Travel. Time to sit back, grab a cup of coffee, and enjoy my conversation with Holly Worton as we hear about her 100-mile hike. Joining me today is Holly Worton. Welcome, Holly.
Thank you for having me.
Well, I appreciate you making the time to be with us today, and I would love for you to start by telling people, where are you right now?
I am in the UK. I'm originally from California, but I live in England, and I have for about the past 8 years. And currently I'm staying at a friend's house. She's on holiday, so I'm staying at her home while she's away. She actually runs a B&B that I usually stay at when I'm here. And while she's gone, I'm taking care of the house and enjoying it. So I'm in Avebury, which is the site of the largest stone circle in Europe.
That is fantastic. Now, what's neat about what you do, one of the reasons why I'm really thrilled that we get to connect is you're actually bringing together two things that I love, which is solo travel and like entrepreneurial business spirit.
Yeah.
So this conversation today may take a little bit of that route as well, because when I have someone with your mindset and your work, I want to make sure that anybody who is trying to figure out how do they do this solo travel thing and either build a business around travel or build a different business, what does that even look like? Sound good?
Sounds perfect.
Great. So you are currently writing a series of walking journals based on solo walks in nature. And I'm not a big nature person. I'm not a big hiker, but like, how can you not just be in a totally different Zen place when you're doing that?
Yeah.
So what inspired that work for you?
Well, I grew up in California and I always really liked hiking. I always really liked being out in nature. And then I kind of forgot that for many, many years. I lived in Latin America for many years, and it was like I forgot that love for nature. And then when I moved to England about 8 years ago, walking is such a big thing here, and nature is so benign compared to North America. We don't have bears. We don't have any of the scary things that I was used to from back home. And it's very safe here. So I just started going on these long walks out in the woods alone, felt very safe doing it, and just started doing more of it. So 3 years ago was when I did my first long distance walk by myself. And that was just absolutely life-changing for me.
Well, tell me a little bit more about that. So when you're saying a long distance walk and that it was life-changing, talk about what that is.
Right. So I was always really inspired by reading walking books about people in North America doing the Pacific Crest Trail, the Appalachian Trail. But of course, in England, we were much smaller. This is an island. It's not that giant landmass that is North America. So when I say long distance trail, I don't mean 3,000 miles. I mean like 100 miles.
Okay. It's still 100 miles. I think that's still something that many people would still give you props for.
Yeah. So the first trail I did was actually exactly 100 miles, and it's called the South Downs Way, and it runs through southeast England. And I decided to do that on my own, just booked the accommodation because you can't wild camp in England. So booked the accommodation, carried everything on my back in my backpack and just went from place to place every night, went from one end to the other of the trail, and I did it in a week.
Was your background in doing something like this before you took this trip?
Absolutely nothing. My background was doing day walks. So I loved spending a Saturday or Sunday. I would go out for maybe a 10 or 12 mile walk. I thought I was ready for this 100-mile walk. I did not realize that walking 10 or 12 miles a day for 7 or 8 days on end is very different from a walk every weekend because the toll on your body accumulates as you go throughout the week. So it was a lot more challenging than I thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to be a piece of cake. Also, I was not used to walking with a big backpack on my back. Now, I packed light, I traveled light, but I made the small mistake of booking late June, early July, which is summer. And you think of England as being cool, gray, overcast, drizzly. It was not. It was California weather angels accompanied me on my walk and brought the worst of the sunshine and the heat. So sunshine and heat means that you're thirsty, you need to drink more water, and you need to carry more water. So my backpack was really heavy because a lot of this trail goes through really remote, by European standards, places where you can't necessarily, sometimes there's a water tap along the way, sometimes there's not. So you might have to start out in the morning with 3.5 liters of water to get you through the day. And that's 3.5 kilos. I was not prepared. But it also wasn't a disaster because, again, nature is very benign here. I was staying at a B&B every night so I could have a nice shower, sleep in a nice bed. So I was recovering kind of every night and, get ready to go the next day. So while it was shocking to me how unprepared I was, I did it. I got through it. I survived. And I enjoyed it sometimes.
Well, right. So you're alone with yourself for a long time. I'm sure those first couple days you're taking on those 10 plus miles in a day and you're like, yeah, we got this. And then as each day goes on, the days get a little longer and a lot sweatier probably. So what were some of the things? Of course, I loved the book and the movie Wild. What's nice is they were English speaking.
Yeah.
There wasn't a cultural barrier really that way. But what were some of those adventures that you have that maybe like get buried in the back of your brain and now you go, oh, yeah, I remember that. That was pretty great.
We actually wrote a book about the experience. So if I go back and I read the book, I have all the stuff. I always say I included all the blisters, sweat, and tears in the book because there were tears. There was one day, I think it must have been the 4th or 5th day. I was about halfway through and I was so hot and so tired. And I was kind of coming towards the end of my day and approaching the village where I was going to stay the night. But the signs on the trail weren't clear and I wasn't sure where to get off the trail to get to the village. And I was hot and I was tired and my feet were just aching and I just burst into tears. And I just thought, I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if I want to do this. I don't know if I want to go on. And I eventually found my place, got into my room, had problems with the shower, burst into tears again. So it's like meltdown after meltdown. And I remember speaking to my husband on the phone and I said, I don't know whether I want to do this tomorrow. I don't know if I want to keep going. And he said, well, that's okay. Either way is fine. If you need me to come drive down, pick you up, that's fine. You just let me know. And I went to bed that night still thinking, I don't know if I'm going to do this tomorrow. And when I woke up the next morning, miraculously, all of the aches and pains were gone. And I thought, well, what the heck? I'll just do it. So I did it.
Well, so you also had a little bit of a backup plan.
Yes. I mean, luckily I was doing this in the southeast of England, which is where we live. My husband was fairly nearby. He could have picked me up or I could have taken a taxi to the nearest train station. There were ways of getting out of it. Like I wasn't in the remote, wild wilderness of North America.
I actually would say that in some ways, there has to be a bit more commitment. And I don't know if I want to say discipline. Maybe that's the word I'm looking for right now. But honestly, I wonder if this is something that you talk about when you talk to people about business as well, because it's, are you all in? And when you know that you have a backup plan available, are you able to fully commit?
Yeah, that's an excellent point. And the funny thing is, mindset is such a huge part of this. And my business is helping entrepreneurs with their business mindset. Well, all of my mindset knowledge just went out the window on this walk. It was like I forgot what I did for a living. And I know that with physical things, my mindset had not served me in the past. The first time I tried to run a marathon, I didn't finish precisely because of my mindset. I knew that. And yet it was like I forgot all the tools I had to boost my mindset and get me in the place to make this easier. So it was really challenging.
It was supposed to be.
Yeah, exactly. It was the experience I needed to have.
It was. And for good or for bad, that is the reality that when we're faced in those situations, the courage to not just enact that backup plan. I love having a safety net. I think that's wise. I think, and people in general should have safety nets, financial and people to rely on and things like that. But the courage that you have that and to still push yourself through the challenges is really that testimony to what's in your core. I mean, really, Holly, if you think about it, the mindset wasn't serving you, but your determination and your focus and persistence, that served you.
Yeah, it was like I couldn't bear the thought of getting home and being like, well, I gave up. It wasn't an option. And so I just thought, well, just push on. We'll give it a try. A very similar thing happened to me just 2 weeks ago. There's this shorter walk, 36 miles, that I usually do in 3 days. And I've done it a couple of times. And I thought, well, no, I'm going to do it in 2 days and I'll see if I can do it in 2 days. It'll be a long 2 days, but it's supposed to be overcast and a bit stormy, so it'll be nice. Well, again, the California weather angels brought the sunshine, brought the heat. It was so hot by English standards, my God. And so I walked 17 miles the first day, 20 miles the second day, because it was just over 36 miles. And I roasted and I drank all my water and I ran out of water the second day. And I had to drink the tap water that I had to like pour on my head and keep my head cool. And I kept going. And there was a point on the second day where I thought, well, if I just veer off the trail at this point, I can quit early. And so I located on the map and I was like, okay, well, when I get to that point, I can make the decision. Do I quit or do I keep going to the end? And at one point I noticed that I had passed that point where I had to leave the trail if I wanted to quit. And I was like, well, past that point, so I guess I'm going to be fishing.
Our mind gives us those tests.
Yeah.
And then subconsciously you just said, well, I don't need that.
Yeah, it was like I planned to make that choice, but then my subconscious was like, nope, you're going to finish this walk, so we'll forget about that.
I love it. Well, so another part of what you're sharing right now, though, is you're doing some of these solo adventures and you are married. And I know that many of my episodes are talking to married women, parents, and things like that. But there are still people who are in this state of disbelief that a married woman would travel solo. And I'll use this facetiously. And her husband would let her.
Yeah.
Facetiously. Because I think we're past that. But maybe it's not let her, of course. It's not about permission, but more about pushback.
Yeah, or encouraging even. Yeah, so I'm very lucky. My husband and I work together. We both work from home, so we're kind of joined at the hip. So because we see so much of each other, we're like the exact opposite of a normal couple who goes to work separately and they don't see each other all day. So when we go on holiday, we will often go on holiday alone because we need that alone time. And he doesn't like walking. I mean, he will humor me on my birthday and we'll go on a walk together, but like it's not his thing. Which is fine with me because I like doing it alone. So when I do my walking adventures, I do them alone and he's very happy because he gets to stay home with the cats and watch sports.
So it's actually like each person gets their own little vacation, but I like how you shared that. When people get married, it's often because they think about how can they have their lives together and things like that. But people do vacation often very differently. And so there's compromises that come with that. And the fact that you guys have recognized we're good. Like we have a lot of quality time together. 90% of what we're doing is quality time together. So a little bit of a break versus everybody going off to work and doing their own thing each day. It's just about balance.
Yeah, it is. It is.
Well, that's great that you guys were able to recognize that though, because again, without recognizing it, I think people get a little bit stifled.
Yeah. And he's also really good at encouraging me. He knows that I get a bit antsy when I haven't done one of these walks in a while. And he says, have you planned your next walk? Where are you going? Have you booked it? So he's really good at encouraging me to do the things that he knows help me to stay balanced and connected and grounded.
So he recognizes when you get the travel itch.
Yeah.
I love it. So I would love to hear about this idea of mindset and how you're using that to inspire people with business, as well as how you're using that in travel?
So mindset is something that came into my awareness just about 5 years ago when I did some training in a process called Psych K, which helps you reprogram your beliefs at the subconscious level. So I trained in that for personal use to work with some issues that I had tried with all kinds of other techniques and it wasn't shifting. And so trained in this for my own use, realized how much it changed my life because I started using it every single day with myself because I was obsessed, and started seeing massive changes in my self-confidence, my self-esteem, which had really been low before that. And so I thought, well, I need to bring this into my business. And I ended up making that my business because before that, I had struggled so much with business. I'd been doing the stuff you're supposed to do, forcing myself to get myself out there, but it was with the wrong energy. It was hard. It felt awkward. It was uncomfortable. And it was because I didn't have the self-confidence. I didn't have the self-esteem. I didn't trust myself. My mindset was just wrong. I didn't believe I could do the things I wanted to do, even though I've been an entrepreneur since 1999. This was not my first business, but I didn't have the beliefs I needed to make that happen.
So changing beliefs, though, it's not like changing your mind. Well, it is exactly changing your mind.
It is.
This mindset work is at an entirely different level. I think it becomes very difficult for people to understand, but yet when they do get it, it's a major aha moment. How did you really realize that the issue for you was part of a mindset issue?
It was by accident. It was because I had this thing in my personal life that wasn't shifting. Someone had recommended this technique to me. I thought, well, what the heck? I'll train in it. I did, started using it, and then realized that I could apply it to everything in my life, including business stuff. And then I started seeing the changes. And then I was like, oh, my problem was in my head. I didn't believe the things I needed to believe. It was quite by accident. Very happy accident, but yeah, not planned.
That's great. I know that part of my audience for this is people who are feeling stuck in one way. And my goal is always to inspire and provide resources and make things seem possible.
Yes.
But this is a 30-minute call that happens once a week. And as soon as people are done feeling inspired, I think they go back to their regular routines. Or sometimes getting inspired can actually make people feel more stuck.
Yeah, because other people are doing all this amazing stuff. And here I am doing my same thing.
What actions do you suggest that I'm going to kind of go with the common woman as a place to start when they don't know if mindset is really their issue? And I think if the question starts coming up, it probably is.
I think everyone can benefit from doing mindset work because no matter how good your life is, no matter how good your self-confidence, your self-esteem is, there's always stuff to work on. If you're into personal development and you're into living the best life you can and living a life full of joy, there's always stuff you can kind of clear up and improve. And that doesn't mean that there's something wrong with us, and that doesn't mean that we're broken, but there's stuff you can polish up in your head that will make you have a happier, easier life. So honestly, I am a big fan of doing this kind of belief work. And I don't believe that there's any one technique that works for everyone. I think people have to find what works for them. So my introduction into this was Psych K. Before that, I trained in NLP and it wasn't really my thing. There's hypnotherapy, there's EFT, which is the tapping thing. So many techniques out there that you can train in to work with yourself every day, every week, whatever you can fit in your schedule, to change your beliefs, to release your blocks, and to start believing the things you need to believe to live the life you want to live. I'm such a fan of training in something and doing it yourself because it's so much more empowering to have this tool that you can use whenever you want, whenever you have a spare 5, 10, 15 minutes to do this work rather than relying on someone else. Now, I also do look outside myself and I do see other professionals to get help with this, but I'm also working on this stuff with myself every week, multiple times a week sometimes.
I love that you're encouraging people not just to get help, but to become the help that they need.
Yeah. Yes, exactly.
And the techniques that you've mentioned, again, for some people that might be common language.
Yeah. For most people it won't.
For NLP, that's neuro-linguistic programming. But right now, I think in tech world, NLP is coming to take on a new language. There's a lot of resources, and we'll tell you at the end of the show how you can connect with Holly if you have questions about her work. I think the key message that you've illustrated here are you recognized personally that there was probably an opportunity. You looked into different resources. You sought out the one, and not just the one. So again, you did a lot of things, and now you found something that you are comfortable with. And because you actually got trained in it, it's not only something that you're bringing to the world, but it's something that you can continue to help yourself with regularly.
Yes.
I love it. And again, if I were doing an entrepreneurial show, I'd want to keep going down this path a lot more as you apply it to businesses. But really, this is still back to that idea of mindset. What we talk about when we think of mindset is what's possible for you.
Yes.
And for our listeners, I don't know, I'll throw an activity out there, Holly, and please reframe it because this is not my area of expertise. But for anybody who is really sitting here thinking that they're feeling stuck, to actually grab a piece of paper and to list the world of possibilities and put on some fun music and go back to this time where, almost like with that childlike curiosity of, I wonder what it's like to touch an elephant. I wonder what it's like to be in the desert. Approach that idea of possibilities with that childlike curiosity and spend no more than 5 minutes just writing out possibilities for yourself. I think that kind of activity can be a very mind expanding and freeing activity. Tell me what you think, Holly.
I absolutely agree. And I am going to say that, yes, that's an excellent activity. And also, after doing the mindset work, the kind of belief work that I do, you will be able to see so many possibilities for yourself that you couldn't see before. Because it's like you release the blocks, you release the limiting beliefs, and you see that you are capable of doing so much more than you ever could have imagined just because you believe in yourself and you trust yourself and you have confidence in yourself.
I agree completely. Part of my journey here started when I had lost my dad, and my solo travels started as part of healing from grief. And I was seeing a grief counselor at the time, and she was asking me about my dreams. And I kind of looked at her like, lady, I don't have time to dream. I am settling in a state and managing my work and managing a home and all the dream, like you're foolish. And she said, well, just for now, can you just write down the word dream and maybe put it on the refrigerator so you see it? And so it triggers it. That was a very important moment for me to remember that dreams are so important. And in dreaming, not necessarily dreaming while you sleep, but again, the considering of possibilities. And I was so blocked by whatever had been going on in my world that it didn't even seem possible to think about what was possible.
Yes. It's so funny because I'm just rereading Denise Duffield Thomas's book, which has just come out, a new edition. It's called Lucky Bitch. And she's all about money mindset. And so she tells this story about how she had this coach that said, write down your ideal day. And so she writes down this day where she and her husband wake up on this beautiful bed with beautiful sheets, and they do yoga, and they spend the whole day eating beautiful food and blah, blah, blah. And she was like, this is so disconnected from my reality, which is I wake up in a lumpy bed. I go to a job I hate. I eat dinner sitting on my sofa, which is stained with cat pee. Like, how do I get from here to there? But it was that exercise in imagining what could be, what would she like, that just completely opened up her mind and got her on this path of getting the mindset she needed to get the things she wanted and to have the lifestyle she wanted.
I think it says so much. And so when people are listening and they're feeling stuck and they're feeling that travel is part of those possibilities, I think one of the things that has been so wonderful for me about travel, when I'm traveling, I have childlike curiosity.
Yeah.
I just want to take it all in. And I'm not as much like, I don't have to go see every single site and cram it all in. And I want to be, and I want to embrace what's happening. And that's a mindset situation. But I think of so many people, and the reason why a lot of people struggle with re-entry when they come home is because they've been inspired. They've been in this open, expressive, like be yourself because nobody cares kind of situation. And then they come home and they go back to like their same routine and the same people and the same experiences and the cat pee on the couch. And I have a friend who does this work in re-entry trauma. It's a hard transition.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I remember the very first time I traveled was when I studied abroad in Spain when I was 21. And it was so hard for me to come back. And I came back during the summer and I had to live with my parents again over the summer. And it was like, I've just lived abroad in a foreign country for an entire year. And now I have to be with my parents for the summer. And I'm sure I was a brat because I just couldn't deal with reintegrating to normal life and having parents. And it was so rough.
Well, the other part that happens when we travel is we grow.
Yes.
And so your parents saw your before.
Yes.
And they didn't see your transition. They may have heard from you, but they didn't experience it through your eyes either.
Yeah.
And so now you come back and you are so different.
Yes.
And they haven't witnessed. It's like someone who is pregnant and you see them, oh, I'm going to have a baby. And then a year later you see them and they have this child and it's like, hey, I missed the whole thing. Yeah. And now you have another human. It's kind of the same, like you're actually birthing a new you in a way when you're traveling like that. And absolutely. People miss it and they're like, well, I don't know how to interact with you as this person.
Because you're not the same person. You've grown, you've changed, you've evolved, you've transformed. And it's all very subtle and intangible. It's in your head because your mind has expanded.
Well, and one of the things that I learned about myself, and it's a quote that I keep up on my screensaver, is that I'm actually never more at home with myself as when I'm traveling solo. Yeah. Because at home, there's roles and history and expectations. And when I'm traveling solo, I'm able to be so much more free that I feel like who I was as a child reemerges.
Yes, that is such a good concept. And I think when you're traveling, your only role is traveler or walker or whatever it is that you're doing. And you can let yourself be free in ways that you wouldn't at home. I mean, last night, a ridiculous example, but yesterday evening, I went on a walk kind of near here, went through some fields. It's all surrounded by farmland. So I went out to see these two standing stones and they're in a field surrounded by full of daisies. And so I went to see these stones. And as I was walking back to get over the fence to walk back home, I was walking through this field of daisies and wildflowers, and it was beautiful. And I just started skipping like a little girl, and I skipped all the way through the field back to the fence. And I was like, la, 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 it's beautiful. Like it was a gorgeous evening. It was 9:30 at night. The sun was still out because it gets dark late here. And it was beautiful and warm, and it just felt so summery and playful. And it was like, when do you skip at home? I don't skip at home. But skipping through this field of daisies was the obvious thing to do because it just felt so joyful.
Absolutely. I think that very story illustrates the freedom that traveling solo can bring.
Yes. And would I have skipped through the field if I were not alone? Maybe, maybe not, but certainly a lot easier when no one's watching you.
That's exactly it. Now, I would love to know, you've done this 100 miles.
Mm-hmm.
What's next for you? Do you have a next challenge?
Well, it's so funny. Before I did that walk, I'd mapped out in my journal this whole list of trails that I wanted to do. This was before I walked the 100 miles. I was like, I'm going to walk the 100 miles, and then I'm going to walk this trail and that trail. And they just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And then after doing that walk, I was like, I don't know if I really need to walk really long trails. So the next year I did another national trail, which was shorter. It was 87 miles and loved that. And I think that's a nice length for me. Like I've always wanted to do the Camino de Santiago in Spain. That would be about a month. I still want to do that, but it's like I don't need to prove anything to myself. Like I love the shorter walks. It's so easy to fit 7-8 days into my schedule. But I've also realized that by doing the even shorter trails, the 2-day trails, the 3-day trails, it still gives me so much of what I get when I'm out for longer, which is just being alone in nature for hours on end. And that just recharges me and reconnects me in ways that I don't get from just one day out on the trail. So all kinds of walks are in the future for me.
That's awesome. I want to make sure that people know how to connect with you and tell a little bit more about what working with you is like. Again, who do you love working with and how do you serve them? Because this conversation about mindset is business and personal and all sorts of stuff.
My business website is hollyworton.com, and that's WORTON. And I work with all kinds of women, mostly women who are feeling stuck, who are feeling blocked, who know that they want to do so much more, even if they don't necessarily believe they're capable of it. And I help them by reprogramming their beliefs and releasing energy blocks so that they can do the things that they want to do. And we don't always just work on business because everything is related. So maybe someone shows up to a session and says, actually, can we work on my relationship with my partner? Of course, because that's going to be affecting your business because everything is related. So it's not just business stuff that we work on, but it does get results in business. So that's kind of one side of what I do. And then the other side is the walking. And that website is shewalksinnature.com. And there you can find links to my books. I have a meetup group where I take women walking once a month. And hoping to take women on longer walking adventures as well, because my whole thing is to encourage women to get outdoors either on their own or with me or however.
That is great.
Yeah.
Well, and again, what you're doing is you're creating a community for people to stay connected. And I think that makes a huge difference as well, that people who are interested in doing this, and we've had a couple of guests on the show who've talked about the Camino Trail or have done other types of adventures, and hearing stories and meeting women who've done it helps everybody say, oh, well, if she can do it, it might be possible for me. And I feel like there's somebody that I could talk to that I trust to learn more about it.
Yeah. And it's like that book and the film, Wild. She was so unprepared. She had no idea what she was getting herself into. That gigantic backpack that she brought, like she was so unprepared and she did it.
Yep.
She was fine. I absolutely believe that the more stories we have of women stepping outside of their comfort zone and doing these things, whether it's walking, traveling, whatever, it inspires everyone else and it opens up our minds to think, oh, well, maybe I could.
That's exactly right. It opens up the possibilities.
Yes.
And I think that when that happens, it makes a huge difference for everyone.
Yeah.
Holly, it has been a true pleasure. And I will make sure that all of those links that you've mentioned are included in the show notes. I really appreciate you taking the time to share your story with us today.
Thank you. I so enjoyed our conversation.
Wasn't it great to hear the stories that Holly shared with us today? I love the idea about thinking about the possibilities. And when you're in the right mindset, that even more possibilities become possible. Well, sisters, we've reached the end of another episode. As of today, Go Solo Live has been bringing you stories of solo female travelers for 2 years. I truly love that we've been able to talk about transformation, self-discovery, and so many experiences for everyone to learn from. I hope you've enjoyed the laughter and the connection that I believe we've had in each episode. This will be the final episode of Go Solo Live. It's been my pleasure to serve you and share these stories. Thanks to all who've tuned in over the years. Continue to stay in touch with me at Jennifer@transformviatravel.com or on Facebook at Transform Via Travel. Wherever your travels take you, remember, even though you're solo, you're not alone.